Hi, everyone. It's Emil. It's Emil Guillermo. Emil Amok to you. Welcome to my private podcast. It is private for all intents and purposes. It's live. We're doing it live. And if you're here, great. If you're not here, that's okay too. But maybe you're catching this on a replay. I don't put this on all the, wherever you podcast. No. I put it on YouTube at Emil Amok 1. I put it on Twitter, or X, formerly known as Twitter, at Emil Amok. I put it on Facebook, fb.com/EmilGuillermo.media. Catch it there live or in its various state. And then you listen to it. And you listen to it like you would, say, good old-fashioned talk radio. But you never got people like me on talk radio. You always got people like Rush Limbaugh, right? I mean, did you ever wonder, why is it that all talk radio is all right-wing? Why was all talk radio all like pre-MAGA? Pre-maggot MAGA? Well, why was that? Well, it's because of Rush Limbaugh primarily. And there was this thinking that, well, he gets an audience. We couldn't just put Rush Limbaugh on 24 hours a day. I mean, they could have, but, then what do we do with all these unemployed talk show hosts? And so that's what happened. Then they went to all the talk show hosts and said, well, who wants a job? You got to be right wing. And then that suddenly everyone said, oh, well, I'll be right wing. And a lot of people became right wing. A lot of people who were talk show hosts and you never knew what their politics were because it wasn't a political talk radio thing. It was just people talking about the news or talking about life. And suddenly the only people who had talk radio jobs were right-wing conservatives like Rush Limbaugh. That's how it happened. From 89 to 90 to the 2000s to the present day. I can't say now in the present day because who's got AM radio? Who listens to that stuff? I mean, maybe, but you could see how in the digital form, people like Sirius, on their channel, they divide it up just like they divide up music, right? Here's rap, here's rock, here's yacht rock, here's conservative talk, here's, regular talk, here's news talk, here's left-wing progressive talk. They've divided it up like this is traditional radio thing. But you never saw people like me who were just, interesting people who are reading, widely, but, may have a kind of, I mean, you could tell, I don't want to call it a bias, but I guess for lack of a better term, that's what it is. I have a perspective. I have a point of view. So you could do that here. And, I worked at WRC in Washington, D.C. in the 80s, and I worked at some they became conservative stations in San Francisco, but they weren't when I got there. And I've always enjoyed the talk radio form, and this is the place to do really traditional news talk. Read between the lines, talking about the news. That's what we do here. And you have a talk host who is actually a legitimate journalist. Now, that's not often the case. Rush Limbaugh, was he a legitimate journalist? No. He was a showman. He was a former DJ. Look, no knock on former DJs. I like former DJs. I was a former DJ too. But I was an award-winning journalist. And most talk hosts aren't. They're more entertainers. Look, we're all blurring the line. But we have access to this new media. And so this is my micro talk show. Emil Amok's Takeout, my takes on all things considerable. Welcome. We're here Monday through Friday. I'm glad you found us. Sometimes we're here live. like I am today, and sometimes I'm not because not because I get lazy, but because I thought I'll just replay yesterday. Sometimes you just have to replay yesterday. But today I thought I'd come on. It's November 1st. It's Day of the Dead. And, it's Day of the Dead. And there are too many dead. There are too many dead on the Day of the Dead. This is the day when you think about all those people who are close to you who have passed on. Man, there are so many. But immediately, the people closest come to mind: mom, dad, baby brother, my cousin Stefan. Now you look at my page on the site formerly known as Twitter, now known as X. You'll know I have a big banner that says "Justice for Stefan," and you say, "Well, who's Stefan, Emil? Is that Stephen Curry with a bad call from a ref? You want justice for Stephen Curry?" No. Stephen Curry, I love. It's great watching him play. We are blessed to be in the Stephen Curry era and to be in the Bay Area and to watch him. But no, Stephen is in reference to my late and lamented cousin, Stephen Guillermo, who was gunned down in 1994. No, gunned down, excuse me. Oh my God. The numbers are jumbled in my head. Gunned down 2014. What happened to Stephen? You know my Stephen story. Stephen, lefty, my cousin who came from the Philippines in 1998, before 2000. They had to wait 20 years for the parents to get visas, and while waiting in line, they had babies, they had kids, they had a family. So they come before the millennium, and he's just a kid. And he grows up. I mean, he's the 1.5, right? When you talk about young Asian Americans who come as children with their parents to be Americans. And you start seeing it in these guys and, these people in general, right? From being born in the Philippines or born in Asia, they come to America, they adopt Asian ways, they bloat up, they start looking like Americans because of that standard American diet, SAD, the sad American diet. If only they'd stuck to their Asian diets, and they'd be slim and no diabetes, no heart disease. But then there was this other thing that brought down Stephen, and that's gun violence in America. I mean, he had a pretty normal, life from 7, 10 to early college years. I think. I mean, our family wasn't as close as I'd like to think it was, but we'd see Stephen and his brother and his sister and all these other cousins who came in and around the same bunch around the same time. But Stephen's story is that he was 27, which to me now sounds like, oh wow, that's a long time ago. But I mean, he was working, didn't finish college, but then went back, finished at 27. He had to work. That's why he wasn't at college at the standard, 18 to 21. He was working, trying to help his family. And at 27, he was about to graduate, actually, finish his 4-year degree, San Francisco State. He was out celebrating in San Francisco, went back to the apartment that he grew up in the south of Market with his family, a 2-room apartment. I think they were, I was in the apartment once. I think they might have had 2 bedrooms, and a kitchen for 5 people. It was late. He was celebrating. He was drunk. He goes to the wrong apartment door. He gets in and is shot and murdered. His birthday is coming up this month. His death day was June 2014. Oh, did it again. May 2014. I used to have these things right at the tip of my tongue. I used to know these facts. But it was May 2014. And 9 years now. 9 years he's been gone, but he'll celebrate. He was 27, 20, I think he would have been 29 this month, because he died when he was 27, with his 28th birthday coming up. So this would have been his, So it would have been nine years. Man, how time flies. And I remember going out there to the Department of Justice in San Francisco saying, hold the man, you got the killer. Keep him. Keep him locked up. And they let him go. They held him for as long as they could, 3 days. And then they let him go. And they said, look, we can't hold him any longer, Emil, because the California law says that you can shoot to kill anyone who you suspect is an intruder who comes into your home. It's part of the stand your ground laws in America, or derivative, and it's the basis of the California homicide law. Self-defense. But it took a life. And I've tried to get the law changed, but there's no way you're going to get the law changed. Just, an uphill battle. I guess just like fighting for gun safety, an uphill battle. And I just didn't see the groundswell of support. Like, if you talk about gun safety, you're going to get people, even though they know it's an uphill battle, you're going to get people coming to you saying, yeah, we support that effort. But the only ones who really responded to the call of Stefan's circumstance were other people who had relatives who were killed when they went to the wrong door or when they were in the wrong place, and when the laws protected their murderer and did not protect the innocent person who simply was at the wrong door. Not enough to make a change in the law. And now it's been, like I said, 9 years. And we talk about it here. We talk about it. We tell the story because we don't want people to forget. We want people to know that this sort of thing has happened before. And if it happens again, well, maybe it'll amplify the fact that there are people who want this current law changed and a new law put in to protect the innocent who have passed. So I remember my cousin Stefan today on the Day of the Dead. He's the most violent death in the family. But we also remember those close. My mom. God, I don't even know how she died. She was in a home in San Francisco. I was in Chicago at a convention. And I might have had a little too much to drink then. It was 2 a.m. in the morning in Chicago, and I was just sitting on a hotel room couch. I had the TV on. Oprah was on. I get a call from home telling me my mother was found dead. And she was in the care of people we trusted. I mean, you wanted to dispute, how did it happen? How did she passed on? That was around early 90s. And then, of course, my father, who I talk about a lot, how he passed away. I was there. We'd seen the Giants play. The Giants won their game against the Phils that afternoon. It was a businessman special. We took Muni down to Candlestick Park. And it was my treat. I was coming back from the East Coast there to stay with my dad, and we had a fun time. Got back home after the Giants won, and he was just resting, lying down in his bed, and he never got back up. We got him up. He was having heart issues. Wasn't smart enough to call for the medics, the EMTs, the ambulance. Thought, oh, we've got a car. My Uncle Pat was there. Uncle Pat was, we called him Uncle Pat. He was the photographer for my sister's wedding that happened that weekend. And Uncle Pat, he had a car. We could drive. Uncle Pat can drive. Let's go. Bad move. I'm sure my father died in Uncle Pat's car driving down Geary Boulevard. Day of the Dead. That was in June 1978. Almost a year after I had graduated from college. Almost to the day. It's June 12th, I believe. Is that it? June 12th? It was June. That was the day of his death. Just recalling the days, or recalling loved ones who've passed on the Day of the Dead. I mean, that's traditionally what the Day of the Dead is for. I mean, we have All Hallows Eve. You go out, celebrate, have candy and whatnot. Hope you had a good Halloween. Had a few trick-or-treaters, young ones. They did not ask me to do my Larry Leong monologue. You can go and watch it, I guess, in show 594 on YouTube. Episode 594. This is 595. But I want to talk about the ceasefire on the Day of the Dead, because this is significant. I mean, honest to God, I think things are turning. The tide is turning in terms of the war effort, with Israel's retaliation and Israel going on the ground. I mean, before people were always warning Israel, be careful, you know, mind the laws of engagement. You have a right to attack, but you can't overdo it. I mean, that was the sentiment. But for the most part, people said, yeah, what Hamas did was terrible. It was terrorism, the likes of which we have never seen or haven't seen for a long, long time. And a measured response would be appropriate, and people were just waiting to see what Israel would do. And now we know it's not as measured as we'd like. There's some innocent civilians who are dying. And now my email box is flooded with these calls that say the two words that were uttered at that hearing in Washington yesterday. That if you were watching the various news outlets, the protesters were saying ceasefire. Those were the two words. And while General Austin and Secretary Blinken were asking for more hundreds of billions for Israel, the word ceasefire was mentioned, and I hope it stuck, because reasonable people can no longer sit back and say, okay, Israel, take your best shot. I'm a pacifist, but I'm going to let you take, you deserve it. I don't know if Israel deserves it. I mean, Israel doesn't deserve one free retaliatory strike that could harm innocent civilians. But it's time for reasonable people now to say, come on, it's time for peace. We've mentioned how in the last week, President Biden has talked about a two-state solution suddenly, and it looks like Palestine and Israel and peace is back on the front burner. But after being on the back burner for so long, and after different approaches were sought, like maybe a general peace in the Mideast with the Saudis, which doesn't exactly answer what do we do with Iran and their antagonism toward Israel. But now it's the two-state solution is back. People are talking about it. And only because it's the only thing that we know that sounds reasonable, especially when we're looking at these retaliatory strikes that are killing innocent civilians, Palestinians. We can't stand for that, right? I mean, we if you're a person of peace, you can't stand back and say, okay, you get your free shot, Israel. You got to say, this is a time when good, reasonable people say, enough already. Let's come together and talk. And so I've had a number of emails already from organizations. Here's one from a group, Othering and Belonging Institute. With the death toll in Gaza climbing past 8,500 people, including more than 3,500 children, and hundreds more being killed each day in Israel's relentless bombardment of homes and other civilian infrastructure, we at the Other and Belonging Institute join a growing global chorus of calls for an immediate ceasefire, as has been repeatedly demanded by the United Nations, and a return of the hostages, of course. I mean, it's the only reasonable stand. I mean, Joe Biden brought up the idea of a two-state solution as a post-war goal. But before we even get to that, we need to talk about a ceasefire. Now, they mentioned it to Blinken and to Austin yesterday in Congress. The protesters did. But for the most part, no one is taking a ceasefire seriously at all. And I'm talking about the leaders. I'm talking about Netanyahu, who says this is a time for war. Certainly, Biden has suggested slowing down the ground war, but the ground war was entered into the last couple of days, and so there's no slowdown there, and no calls for a ceasefire. Now people are making their appeal to Vice President Harris, and now the reasonable stand is ceasefire. And how does that come down in the next 24 to 48 hours? Because if the bombing continues, if Israel's occupation with troops going through Gaza, if that continues, it's only going to get more deadly and more ugly. And like I said, this group here, Othering and Belonging, they're not warriors. They're peaceniks. They write, our work is to build a world of belonging without othering. A feature of othering is drawing lines between those whose deaths are grievable and those unworthy of our grief and concern. Even in the death of our anguish, when love propels our tears and rage, we must not succumb to the drive to draw this line. Especially now, when dehumanization is widespread in governments, on the internet, in the news, in our communities, and in our bodies. All of us must vehemently reject it in all its forms and embrace the value and worth of all people. Our very survival depends on it. We call instead on all of us to hold each other's pain, to listen, and to cross our differences, no matter how seemingly vast, to work together to change the structures of marginalization and domination that harm us all, even if they harm us in greatly different ways. We must find ways to bridge that distance. When we honor each other's unfathomable grief, we reclaim each other's humanity. It is these calls that have repeatedly held our own diverse and impacted staff together through the most painful of times. They work. They work. So this is the Othering and Belonging Institute. They put out that email, and I have to, we need to start thinking in this way, because this is the only way that this sentiment is going to build up some strength so that our leaders act in the right way. Because I think we've been stuck on October 7th thing, which is horror. And then, okay, well, Israel has the right to defend itself. Okay, great. 24 days have passed. And now the retaliatory strikes have begun. And now we have more dead. And that ledger is growing higher. And on the Day of the Dead, we have too many dead. So I think the point is, as Americans, we have more power than we think, because the reason why Israel is the way it is because U.S. has funded Israel. And if we want a ceasefire, if that's the belief of the American people, to want peace and to seek another way to get at peace that does not include the bombardment of Palestine, then you got to let Washington know this is the right place. You don't have to be in Israel or the Middle East to get across the message and to let that sentiment be known. You're in the right place. You're in America. And this is where the leverage is when it comes to the Middle East. Because Israel, they are nothing without American dollars. So, call your congressman. Call us out. at least a ceasefire. Now, Netanyahu doesn't want a ceasefire. And frankly, I don't know what happens, but you have no talk without a ceasefire. And without a ceasefire and with the retaliation going on, all you do is have more dead bodies. Civilians, both sides. And, the real conundrum is, how do you get to a point where you can talk about something like a two-state solution? There was an article in the New York Times today where they said, hey, we're just going on muscle memory. We don't really know where we are. And we know that if we're going to get peace, we're going to need different players in the part of Israel, different players in the part of the United States, because they're going on a playbook that has been dormant for decades, this two-state solution. But at least they're talking about it, and at least it does provide a way toward maybe something new in 2023. It's going to take some creativity. But something like that's got to happen, because we can't just keep retaliatory striking the Palestinians. We just can't. We just can't. So that was othering and belonging. And then I got another from the National Writers Union. And they're upset about Gaza. And they're in solidarity with the International Federation of Journalists and the Palestinian Journalists Syndicate. Our sibling union in IFJ is building support for journalists in the war zone, especially the journalists especially the Palestinian journalists who have lost friends and family and more than 20 of their colleagues. So there are calls throughout the spectrum. I'm getting, my mailbox is filled with organizations reaching out to membership. There's hope. Maybe this is a signal that we are about to see a change. Let's hope so. Let's hope so. We need another approach. And Israel should stop the retaliatory strikes until we talk further, until more talks are, you want to talk, you want to bomb. You can't talk with the bombing. Ceasefire. Talks begin. I don't think that's naive. It's hopeful. It may be the way out, but I can't keep looking at the news, seeing what's happening, and then realizing that we are not moving toward where we need to be. Not when we're bombing. Or I said where, which is maybe a pronoun slip, but not really. Because Israel, funded by the U.S., with our support, they can't do it without us. So maybe we can tell our leaders, hey, ceasefire now. Ceasefire now. All right, I'm going to end our show here only because I've got to go to a dentist. And, dentists are important. When it's hard to get a good dentist these days. The dentist used to be seen as, doctors of the highest order, right? And now they're in the malls next to the massage parlor. I don't know what happened. I mean, they're regular folks. They're well schooled. They have good equipment, and they know how your teeth. They know how the numbers in your teeth work. They know how to do the math. They know. The big thing now is implants. If you have neglected your teeth and they've gone bad, so they have to like extract one because it's dead. The issue is, oh, well, what are you going to do? You got to put another tooth in there, an implant. I know they're not the same thing as breast implants. Don't get excited now. But, hockey players, they got a lot of dead teeth because, they're banging into walls and the elbows. So they have it. But see, now you got to have something to implant the tooth into, like a solid gum or bone there, by your gums. And one of my teeth it's just a little too, there's not enough bone there. So implants, not an issue. Now, implants are fairly modern, but if you can't get an implant, then they're talking about, well, then you need a bridge. And that's where they destroy one tooth to use it as a hanging device to another tooth. And then in the middle, they put a false tooth, a ceramic tooth or something. So it goes over like a dental, they call it a dental instrument, I think is the term. I don't know. Anyway, that's a bridge, but they end up screwing up, one of your healthy teeth to make that bridge over the extraction. I'm going to have it all explained to me, but I've got to go. I do want you to take some time today, though. It's actually the 1st and the 2nd of November. Think about Day of the Dead. Think about the people you've lost. It's a reverent day. And I hope you had a nice blowout for Halloween. Mine was okay. I had vegan candy. I had some not vegan candy. But for the most part, I tried to be 90% vegan. So I had some vegan candy. But the weight of the world is getting to me. And so I hope you had a nice distraction yesterday. I was going to talk sports real quick. The 49ers, who have been embarrassed on defense, went out and got another defensive lineman. So they have all these big, huge guys playing defense, and they're paying a lot. And the idea of getting a good defensive line makes sense, but I don't know. We'll see if it makes the trade deadline was yesterday. The big sports story, though, was that the Texas Rangers are now like one game away from winning it all. They can wrap it up tonight in Arizona. And it's on the road, which is a good thing for Texas because Texas wins all its games on the road. But what makes me like Texas, of course, is Bruce Bochy, the former Giants manager. I also like Marcus Semien, who got a triple and a home run yesterday. He's from San Francisco and played for the A's. Boy, I wish the Giants had gotten Marcus Semien. That would have been a hometown victory. He looked good yesterday. And then, of course, Corey Seager, the former Dodger, looked good. And those would have been the free agents worth getting because they're not super extravagant, but they're good. They're just good. Oh, boy. Anyway, a lot of teams have tried to buy players. The Yanks, the Mets. But it seems the Texas Rangers have done it right. I hope they win tonight. Because yesterday was kind of a blowout early, like 10-0. The Rangers, and then they gave up more runs. It ended up being 11-7. But I sure hope that they put it away tonight. Then Bruce Bochy gets his trophy coming out of retirement after winning 3 World Series with the Giants. Be great. Great to see Bochy. When I was like Bochy, and Bochy he's a big guy. I talked to him once in the locker room, and he doesn't look like I was a catcher when I played base. I didn't even have to squat. I just could stand, and it was like that was enough. If I squatted, I'd be too short. But Boch was, he's a big guy, Bruce Bochy. Anyway, good luck to Bruce Bochy tonight in the World Series that no one knows about, no one cares, because it's not even a big enough distraction to get people off of whatever they're thinking about. It's just, and that's too bad. Oh, come on, watch the Texas Rangers and the Arizona Diamondbacks. What? Who's on that? Who's on those teams? I'm seeing it's just too bad. Too bad it's like that. All right, so I'm gonna run back tomorrow. Listen to replays. 594 for my Larry Itleon monologue. 595 here. My concerns about Day of the Dead. Day of the Dead. Hey, listen. Thank you for listening. This is my takes on all things considerable. Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. ish Pacific Live on Facebook at fb.com/emilguillermo.media, YouTube at Emil Amok1, EMILAMOK1, and YouTube at emilguillermo.media. That's where you get it. You can also, I've got to do something to my website, but you can also catch us on amok.com. So that's it. Back again tomorrow. We close with a little meditation. And so, as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Emil Guillermo here. Back again tomorrow. Mahal Kita.